Welcome everybody to episode 5 of the Leen Eats Paudcast. Today we are very happy to announce that we are joined by our very first special guest, Nick Littlehales. Nick is a sleep coach and author of the book Sleep, The Myth of 8 Hours, The Power of Naps, and the New Plan to Recharge Our Body and Mind. A lot of us, including myself, have tunnel vision when it comes to sleep. We may find ourselves locked into the idea that we need 8 hours of sleep or more per night so that we can tackle our days ahead. However, it is not just our time of sleep that matters. We can use our time awake to wind down, relax and maximise recovery. Whether it be an evening nap or frequent short breaks throughout the day, we can use the time awake to break away from the strain we place on our minds and bodies, whether we are training, doing college assignments or working. When it comes to sleep, one size does not fit all. And just like with a gym program, diet plan, or study schedule, we must find what approach best suits ourselves so we can excel at sleep. There are lots of resources out there, including sportssleepcoach.com, which is a great starting point for anyone looking to improve their mental and physical recovery. For anybody looking to excel at sports or any activity in general, sleep is a vital part of our lives. We hope that on today's episode we can all learn something new and interesting about sleep and that we can benefit from it. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
So welcome everybody to episode 5 of the Leen Eats Podcast. This episode is quite significant as it's the first time we're going to have a guest on the episode, and what better way to start off than bringing our first guest on as Nick Littlehales. Nick is the leading expert in the field of sports recovery and sleep. Sleep is something that's so often overlooked. I actually saw it on one of your tweets recently, Nick, that you were talking about sleep as one of the 3 pillars of health. I definitely believe that sleep would be one of the pillars of health along with nutrition and your exercise as well. It also included mental health into that, but it's like a Venn diagram in a way even. Sleep affects everything, and sleep really does link into every aspect of your health, and it's something that we really do need to value.
So Nick is the author of the bestseller Sleep, The Myth of 8 Hours, The Power of Naps, and the New Plan to Recharge Your Body and Mind. In the book, Nick talks about how to optimize your sleep. He talks about how one size does not fit all in the sense of hours per night. He talks about the R90 sleep program, which we'll go into shortly. And he talks a lot as well about how you can kind of make the most out of your night's sleep, from the 90 minutes coming up to sleep and the 90 minutes after also.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely find it, especially like unlike other books I read on sleep, Nick emphasizes the power of sleep and also gives a guide as well on how to get the most out of it. I'm really excited to speak with Nick as well, not only just for the podcast, but Nick is a role model to anyone out there in the sports science industry. Like as a nutritional student myself, like one thing I really aspire to do is work with elite athletes, and Nick has worked with elite athletes across many domains. This includes works with like Team Sky, British Cycling, Manchester United, and the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, and Real Madrid. So really is a bit of an illustrious list there, Nick. First off, where did your passion from sleep stem from, and how did you get involved in elite sport?
That was a big old introduction there, guys. Thank you for that. But I don't think I ever had a passion for sleep, to be honest. You know, I grew up as a kid. I loved sports. I fell into the sleep industry, a long time ago now. It was more about just paying the bills with a young family and stuff. I managed to graduate through the ranks and become an international sales and marketing director for a very large sleeping sort of comfort company. Um, we set up the very first sleep council in the UK, which I was the chairman of for a while, and I've worked with professors and wandered around the world looking at sleep. And I think it was just a sort of little particular point in my life when my UK base was Manchester in the UK. I just found that there was no definitive approach. It always seemed to be lots of myths and misunderstandings around it, lack of education, all sorts of stuff. And I always thought there was probably another dimension to this beyond sort of like, wake up in the morning, go to bed at night when there's only so many hours left. I just happened to fall into some conversations with a local football club where my office was in the UK and in the northwest of Manchester, which was with a club called Oldham Athletic. I just decided that as a director, I was going to sponsor their shirts. That was a really sort of crazy time, seeing a sort of sleeping company on the front of a football shirt in those times. But that's, mid 80s, mid 90s, sorry. Because of that, I just got invited along to a few football things. And so that's how I bumped into Manchester United, because that was a breeding ground for, the sort of class of 92 players in that time. And yes, they all slept. They were sleepers. They were humans. But it just enabled me to start a conversation with them. Alex Ferguson, now Sir Alex Ferguson, was the manager. The physio in charge was Dave Fever, quite a high-profile physio at the time. And we just started to have some dialogue. And it was nothing about trying to create, I'm a sleep coach in elite sport. It was nothing. I wasn't even trying to do anything. The conversation started to happen. A lot of the players at Manchester United at the time were also England national squad players. So things started to, in the scheme of things, of talking and everything else, and referring to, Manchester United's got somebody talking to them about sleep and about this and about that. That went into the England national squad in 1998 now, long time ago. The World Cup in France. And the physio at the time for the England squad was also the physio for Arsenal Football Club, which is a guy called Gary Lewin. And he was about to get a new manager called Arsene Wenger, who had a completely different take in many respects on, performance in elite sport and particularly football. So I got introduced to Arsenal Football Club through Gary Lewin and through the endorsement of Arsene Wenger, because he was looking at these types of things. And, it was only when I was sort of sat in front of the first team squad of Arsenal back then, with the likes of Thierry Henry, Adebayor, the list goes on, Clichy. It was only when I was sort of faced with all of that, I just realised, well, they are interested. But it needs to be defined and put together into a sort of thing. So I just woke up one day and read in the newspapers back then that, Manchester United, Arsenal, the England squad have got a sleep coach. What and all that is about. So really, it wasn't really a passion. It was just, I had questions and I didn't have any answers and I didn't know where to go with those answers. So I was going to sort of leave the industry. And I just fell into this area of sport. And strangely enough, we were able to put that together in a way to start redefining what that all meant. And they were very open and responsive to that. And so, over the 2 decades, it's been a hell of a challenge because, people take sleep for granted. It's not a performance criteria. But as the decades have shifted, and we've shifted into a real 24/7 global sort of environment, and social media and phones and technology and information and schedules have just gone through the roof, is that I think it's become more significant now because I tend to not talk about sleep the way you perceive it. It's everything you do from the point of wake to when you need to recover again, which is all about human recovery performance. Because when you're actually asleep, your brain's in control. You're not in control. So, like you mentioned before about the other health pillars, are about mental and physical activities. When you're awake and doing them and you can check the data and you can watch what's going on. But when you're asleep, you're asleep. So the whole process of creating a technique and an awareness and understanding, a little journey through sort of 7 little steps and all this sort of stuff to redefine somebody's approach seemed to make a lot of sense. And as you pointed out, it sort of culminated with British cycling around 2008-9, which they basically smashed everything with Team Sky and Tour de France, and I still work with cycling teams now, and there's far more interest, in the
Yeah,
younger
definitely.
generation that I may have sort of redefined it to a degree, but now it's the challenge for the next
Yeah,
generation
you definitely
to
see it
take
even
that
with
on
like when you're talking about
and
working with the
define it
likes of
again.
Manchester United and Arsenal, like the likes of Arsene Wenger and Sir Alex Ferguson were so synonymous with redefining the sports science industry and like how football clubs approach sport in the whole sense and looking at every single aspect of performance. And even with likes of Team Sky, with the likes of the marginal gains there, like you're not going to get much bigger gains or much bigger marginal gains than you will with sleep. And as an athlete myself, I find it so fascinating that like you see people out here spending so much time and
Mm.
money into all these new recovery techniques, but it's one of the things that's easiest to do and one of the easiest things to nail is to actually look at your sleep and try to get to sleep on time, stay disciplined with your sleep. Having worked with so many athletes in the past before, do you think there's any like specific common trait in athletes that say are able to stick best to a like proper sleep regimen and being disciplined throughout the day to affect their sleep? Like, is there any habits they have that stand out to you?
Well, the one that has uh, the most significant effect, because the R90 technique is recovery in 90-minute cycles, which is sort of a clinical dimension. It just happens to be the length of a football game with a break in the middle. So it was easy to change the narrative, the language, by using something from a clinical environment. So you start thinking of 5 cycles a day. 5 90-minute cycles is 7.5 hours. So there's the 8 hours which most people have in their head that they need to get. But there's also another thing called polyphasic sleeping. And let's just say it's multiphasic recovery. So it's not sleeping as you perceive it, but it's actually recovering in a 24-hour rolling process that's about little short controlled recovery periods, maybe every 90 minutes. There's other little short 30-minute cycles, either midday or early evening, that's part of your recovery process. And it enables you then to be able to manage, you know, never mind football or anything else, is, if you're playing a game at 12:30 or 3 o'clock or 5:30 or 8 o'clock at night, or you're an Olympic swimmer or you're an Olympic rower or you're whatever it is you are, you have to manage this process and be able to reach your peak performance when you need to reach it. So within that, it's all about human recovery performance and optimizing that and finding little ways where you can, offset the outside influences that might create things that are counterproductive and maximize other sort of things. So the key thing, I think, for obviously, you make it more difficult if you are not exercising, not have a healthy, balanced diet, and don't have some sort of commitment and approach. Then sleep does become difficult, and it'll become more difficult because you're challenging your brain too much. It constantly adapts, and it constantly adapts. So when you try, you can't. We don't choose to go to sleep. You don't. Oh, I'm going to sleep now. You just go. Well, I'm not doing anything else. Curl up in your bed on the pillow and just go. Make it happen for me. And it's only when you sort of twist it around and go, like everything else you guys get involved with. You can't run a
Yeah,
marathon
exactly.
without doing certain things. You can't do that without doing certain things. So it's kind of like you can't sleep without doing certain things and being aware of those things. So once it becomes once you get that sort of multiphasic approach to your 24 hours, right? Because there's no Monday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We've put those days on. There's no 24-hour clock on what's called the natural circadian rhythm, which is the sun rolling around our planet. It affects everything on this planet, but humans have this ability to move away from it. And over the decades, we've been more and more shifting away from this very natural process. So I think the key thing for a lot of high performance athletes is they first of all realize the sun goes around the planet. It creates a light, dark, and temperature shift, is where energy comes from, bodily functions, maximizes everything you're doing if you're a bit more synchronized with it. And at the same time, you're a brain with bodily functions. So these things never change. Whatever you do and whatever you try and achieve, they never change. So it's always been the key thing within the sort of the the then British cycling mode, who came up with the sort of aggregation of marginal gains, the 1% factors, is that's really what sleep and human recovery is about. Is all these little moments in your every 24 hours where you just do that or do that or do that or do that or do that, and they constantly flow along, and it gives you this ability to have more consistent, sustainable levels of mental and physical recovery, and by default,
Yeah, definitely. That was definitely some
higher levels
powerful
of
stuff there.
performance.
Like, I think you can even take what you were saying there to any aspect of your health if you're looking at the other pillars of health too. Like, if you don't have structure in, say, your nutrition, in your exercise, you're not going to succeed. And the same should go for sleep. And having that R90 program there as well really does help to give that bit of structure and having, yeah.
Well, I think to just jump in, guys, I think, you know, eating, hydrating, exercise, these health pillars, right? Actually, when you think about it, if there was only a passion that describes my approach to this human recovery, is actually if you don't put at least the same enthusiasm and knowledge and education into your recovery process, then why would you expect the other things you do to get the maximum out of it? So if you're not doing that, why would you expect to get everything from your nutritional plans? If you're not doing that, why would you expect to get this from all your exercise and all your events and all your training? Because that takes up more time for most people, maybe 30 odd percent of your 24 hours. It takes up more time than anything else you do. So why ignore that? And so this is why sort of you do sort of spot. You mentioned some clients, but I work with RB Leipzig, I work with Manchester City, I work with Liverpool. You know, British cycling was almost a decade ago. We're working with teams now all over the world in all sorts of different levels, where they're coming in and really trying to push this one further in a really practical and achievable way. But that's really where the shift has happened. My
Exactly.
journey
Yeah.
started a couple of decades ago,
With
but my
what you were
journey's only
saying there
just
as well,
starting now,
like
guys.
that is so true that like sleep does get into every aspect. Even like say with training, if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not going to get the most out of your training. You're not going to get that recovery and that muscle growth as well. That comes with the HGH that gets released when you're asleep. It's the same with nutrition also. It affects the hormones like ghrelin and leptin as well. That's something we've covered quite a bit in college too. Just as you were touching on like how sleep cycles like change between different athletes, I was wondering just for my own interest, say if you're like in a hard block of training, or if you're say training harder than you usually do, or on a day where you're after a particularly hard session, would you necessarily need to adapt or have more sleep cycles on that particular day than say on an easy day or a recovery day? Or would like athletes need more sleep cycles overall than say someone that was regularly inactive?
It's a good question, and it's like I said, it's about continuing to redefine this process. But when if I coach people to sleep up the side of mountains on the floor, you know, racing across America on a mountain bike for 13 days, 24/7. Um, you there's certain things. There's a lot of extreme sports. There's a lot of schedules that create different demands. So yes, there is an individual profile about how that person might be able to achieve that, because we don't all have the DNA to do these things. We kind of think we have as human beings. Oh, I'm just going to go off and do this. I'm just going to go off and do that. But there is a sort of DNA about us, is whether you actually can. and it's combining all the things together. And that's something that, elite sport looks at a hell of a lot more than they used to, particularly with young athletes, is whether their makeup can actually be that, because they've got the technology to be able to analyze it. So I think it's just whatever the challenge is in front of you, then you can apply the technique to recreate your recovery over that rolling 24/7 process. But it won't look like a normal approach. So you can see these things coming, you know. So as I've been working with some athletes in a sort of stream area of race across America, it's on a mountain bike, and you're not racing other people, you're racing a time. And the thing is, to get the other side, they go up mountains, they go everywhere. It's absolutely push it to the boundaries, and they've got to get there within sort of like 13 days and 3 hours. And so literally, as they wander into that process, they start getting recovery in every sort of 4 hour chunk, right? Because they're literally going to go on this so they'll just ride for 4 hours, jump off the bike, curl up on the floor for 20 minutes, grab a CRP, back on the bike and go, right? Now you can't do that forever, but you can train yourself to get your recovery in a completely different way, because actually that is quite a natural way. It's all about understanding that you can't do it for long periods of time. You have to balance it with other things. And it's when you're looking at any individual profile, professional mountaineers, they go halfway up a mountain and have to stop and stay there for a week, hanging off the side of a cliff in a sack, because the weather's changed and they can't keep climbing. They can't come down and they can't go up. So they have to and you just go, where's the fancy mattresses? Where's the fancy pillows? Where's all this stuff? They have to have a really sort of natural way to be able to reveal recovery, even in those extreme circumstances. So when you bring it all down to, everyday athletes trying to get into their profession, and like you guys getting into professional sports, and, it's something that, you have to know about, because if you're going to coach athletes or players or clients or whatever it is, you've got to understand those sort of things, because to get the best out of somebody, these things are really important alongside the other things that we know so much about, isn't it? There'll be a new training program come out tomorrow. There'll be a new strength and conditioning coach program come out tomorrow. There'll be a new nutritional plan come out tomorrow. There'll be some new technology where you can track more data tomorrow, won't there? It's even in your short lives on this planet, I've been around for quite a long time. It's almost unreal what we talk about today and tomorrow than what we were doing maybe even less than 5 years ago. I didn't even know what a vegan was 5 years. Now I'm fully aware of what a vegan is, and I'm fully aware of the social experiments of social media, because most elite athletes will be blocking it this weekend because of the crazy nature of how that creates unnecessary anxiety and stress. And so, when you asked me before, when I was coaching Manchester United back in sort of 97, 98, the treble winning side class, and we didn't have phones, guys. Never mind social media. It's just not to look at the fear side of it, but that's what it is. It's just, we've got to keep defining this process, and with the help of your podcasts and your interest, you are taking interest in a subject that nobody's taken any interest in for the whole lifetime of this human beings on this planet. Sleep has just been, get to sleep and I'll see you in the morning. Why on earth has that ever happened? That's why I was fascinated.
Exactly, especially when you were discussing there about how, I suppose, times are constantly changing, especially in like the sports science industry, where it's constantly evolving. When you look at the likes of Fitbit, which is now a household name, which I wouldn't have heard about 2, 3, 4 years ago, like technologies are constantly being developed. And you also have more barriers to your sleep with the likes of social media and the likes of blue light that's being emitted from our phones that's keeping us up at night. With all the current technologies that are constantly releasing, just from your own experience, if say you could only focus on like one particular type of technology to invest your time and money in, what do you think would be like the most important thing to focus on?
Well, anybody listening to this, because as you mentioned it, because it's sort of this, it's a double-edged sword. It's a two sides to this. One is blue light, which is an energy wave within daylight, right? And that blue energy wave enters your eyes, guys, into some light receptors behind your eyes, and it translates to a little gland in your brain called the pineal gland. And by exposing yourself to blue light, it creates this hormone called serotonin. And serotonin tells your brain to unsuppress everything, make you active, appetite, bowel and bladder, bodily functions. So everything you're fueling up with and hydrating with gets processed in the right way because you're in a serotonin world. Every exercise, mental, physical, cardiovascular, whatever, gets done in the right portions of the day. Right? So blue light is the most important piece of energy stuff you could ever grab. The problem is, without that knowledge, as soon as technology comes along, yeah, and with inside that light, not like all your bedroom light and the light behind you on the wall there, right? This technology has a level of blue light. Now, if I'm going to tell the young generation to stop using their tech, shut their tech down, stop being on it till the early hours of the morning, gaming, engaging with social media, what do? You can't tell them to shut their tech down. What you tell them is fear. That the light coming off your tech is going to keep you awake. So people start to get, hang on a minute, blue light's bad for me, right? It's not. What's We just love this stuff, right? And it's so exciting, but it has a downside. And we really don't know the balance of that. And we're trying to get used to it. Every generation is trying to get used to it and find out really what it means. You know? So within that, you can get screen protectors like you can on your phone to block the blue light. Do you actually know how much blue light's coming out of your device that's going to scare the pants off you and keep you awake all night? No, you don't. So as soon as I started hearing this, I just went, oh, hang on a minute. So I just got a bunch of young athletes. I just said, look, let's stop this. Parents and everybody else, coaches, telling them to shut their tech down because the blue light's bad for them. And we just got get a little light meter, stick it on your phone. It measures lux. It measures the camera on your phone. Lux is the way you measure light. Get it on your phone. Use your camera and just wander around, check it out. Right? Because what I'm going to tell you is that if you spent all day outside, that daylight, sunrise, midday, sunset, is probably at a level of 80 to 100,000 lux, right? And inside there is enough energy to sort your phones out, your brain out, and it's one of those wonderful natural tools. But if I'm sat here where you're sat, suddenly they realise that in the gyms, and in their bedrooms, in the kitchen, where you're sat right now, where I'm sat right now, I'm in front of some windows. The garden's out there. It's still sun shining. I can touch the windows, right? It's only glass, so I'm with daylight, aren't I? But no, it's measuring 200 lux, 200, where I'm sat right now in front of this laptop with the windows there. If I just put it next to the window, guys, I haven't even gone outside. It's less than an arm's length for where I am. It's now nearly 10,000 lux. If I just put it outside the glass, it's 69,000, right? So what you do is if I just move, right, here's my laptop, I can put a screen protector on it if I want. Yeah, fine. But if I'm just at this distance, that blue light's having no effect on me whatsoever. Right? So it's about understanding light exposure, but doing it in a really simple way. And these sort of 14, 50-year-old kids are just wandering around going, hang on a minute, I'm sat here and it's like 200 lux. But if I'm by the window, it's like 4,000 lux. I want some of that stuff, to keep me all going. And if I just step outside, it's not like be outside. It's just like, whoa, this is amazing, And that's one of the fundamental things of how you join things up is there's such a lot of myths and misunderstandings. And this is not like science. I'm just saying that blue light's bad for you? No way. Tons of it in the morning. You need to stimulate that process of the sunrise and sunrise. That creates motivation, bowel and bladder, all sorts of stuff. And then as you move through the day, you get it. And then when you wander into the evenings, you need to create what's called a melatonin world. And that's probably where you're both sitting right now, right? And that means that you are active and you are functional. But what you are is you're in a suppressed state. Right? So the way you create performance is all about light exposure that keeps this harmony and balance with everything about your brain and bodily functions. And all of those things combine. And you've probably heard about blue blocker glasses. Whether you like wearing glasses or not. But if you want to create a melatonin world and a light active world, then you can do that by blocking the blue light. But you can do that with candlelight, amber light, red light, yellow light. And all the lights in our houses are just nowhere near as strong to create that. So it's a bit like wandering into your day with your phone and you've got no way to charge it. Whether you've got a portable charger or a socket, nothing. The panic would start to kick in because these things are so important to us, aren't they? So you kind of always think the only way I can actually function is my exposure to this wonderful world of light. And we don't, I've got a little desk lamp. Right? And so during the course of my day, even sat here, I'll just pop that on for 10 minutes because it's emitting 10,000 lux, which is what your average exposure might be. So while I'm just sitting here talking to you, I'm getting this serotonin hit, right? So it's keeping me in the right place because I still want to be active this evening. I don't be falling asleep at 10 o'clock. I still want to keep that function. Then I might put the glasses on a few hours later to stop that process going. Or, if a lot of players, footballers, don't like lamps and things like that because you can't be outside all the time. You can't. It's just not functional and traveling and things. So they use little funky things like this little human charger, little pod, 15 minutes. All it's doing is pumping some light, 10,000 lux, through some little earpods into the ears, same light receptors. I can be riding bikes, I can be cooking, I can be walking the dog, I can be training in the gym, I can be doing anything I want. And it's just every sort of 90 minutes, I just give myself a nice little 10-15 minute of this lovely stuff called serotonin, completely produced naturally. We're not using caffeine, we're not using other stimulants, we're not using other things to overcome fatigue, we're not worrying about it. Just like keep a nice balance. Strange enough, when you put your head on the pillow and you let your brain take over, it goes, thanks for a great day.
One other
I'm
great
now
thing
going to
that
give
you've
you a great
touched
night.
off in the book is like the lead up to sleep and post sleep. So just like a workout, of course, you're not going to neglect your pre and post routines. So if you were to give our listeners some advice, maybe just the best things to do before sleep and after sleep to optimize the time in bed, what would those be?
When you actually look into the natural circadian rhythms, human beings, brains, body, one of the things about that is sunrise, right? It starts the day. it kicks this serotonin off. It's about light. As you wander into midday and you go into sunset, then you hit this third phase, which is called evening, right? And the nocturnal sleep is all about a period when actually the sun's coming back. That's why it's 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's not 3 o'clock at night. It's just that we've extended that evening process. So we concentrate on post sleep, guys, not pre sleep, right? Because pre sleep's kind of too late, right? You can't suddenly start doing things an hour before you want to go to sleep. That's going to change what's been happening. So it's start the day with a consistent start to your day, right? So I'm a morning chronotype. I'm an AMer, right? So I wake. So my start to the day is 6:30. I will wake anytime between 5:30 and 6:30 and always switch my alarm off because it's only there because I'm not in control of my sleep, right? That's all it. Start my day at 6:30. So I'm absolutely starving. So if I can't use natural sunlight outside to wake me up through the bedroom with no curtains, because that's what I really want, and because of the seasonal change, I've got a little lamp by the side of my bed that comes on at 6 o'clock and puts that sunlight into my bedroom. So when I'm a natural wake, hungry, fuel up, yeah, bladder's normally easy, but give yourself an unrushed process, whatever that means to you, right? An unrushed process because I want to fuel up, hydrate, certainly want to open the bowels, get rid of the waste and feed off the good stuff and start my day getting myself into the right place. And then everything else makes its decision. When I get round to, a targeted sleep time, which can change because I like to take advantage, people do, of things that might be going wrong or might be going right. The summer comes along, I want to be mountain biking with my mates at 10 o'clock at night. You ain't going to do that in October, right? So it's kind of, you always have a little bit of adaptation. So my 6:30 starts my day. 90-minute cycle chopped up is 16 phases. So the first 90 minutes of my day takes me to 8 o'clock. So I don't become a sports sleep coach until after 8 o'clock because the first 90 minutes of my day, or whether it's 60 minutes, whatever you can gather, that's about me going from a sleep state to a wake state and be fully active as a human, right? Now I can smash anything, right? When I get round to, if I wanted 5 90-minute cycles, 7.5 hours, and put all my recovery into one nocturnal place, then my sleep time will be 11 o'clock into 6:30, right? That's 11 o'clock, next cycle is 12:30, then 2 a.m., then 3:30, and into 5, into 6, right? But I'm an AMer, and I'm likely to want to go to sleep earlier, like 9, 10. I don't want to do that in this world, because I'm an AMer. PMers, nighttime chronotypes, like to be awake at 12 and 1 o'clock at night, but get blamed for it, So I have a cycle called 30 minutes. We call them a controlled recovery period. I'm not even trying to sleep, but I have a 30-minute period late afternoon. Nobody can get in the way of that, right? And that's just me having a complete vacant mind space. And I'm just giving my brain the opportunity for a sort of cycle in this natural polyphasic approach called biphasic, triphasic, right? In there. That protects my evening. So I don't rush around in the evening. I've got time. So I'm not. So my targeted sleep time is actually 12:30. And it's 4 cycles into 6:30 and 6 hours. But because I've had an unrushed evening program, then I'm less likely to go into that sleep state with any anxiety or stress or worry or thoughts or still digesting foods or fluids or whatever it might be. And I'll just bomb through those 6 hours, wake up, start your day at 6:30. It's that 30-minute cycle. So my 5 cycles is actually 4 cycles nocturnal with a 30-minute cycle there. Now, people might say, well, that's 6 hours and 30 minutes, and you're not even trying to sleep in that 30. Well, surely 6 hours is not enough. Yeah, but most people allocate 8-9 hours sleeping, but they're always waking up and going to the toilet, lots of disturbances, get stuck in light sleep, don't get any deep sleep, don't sleep all the way through, because the first 90 minutes of my day is recovery. So that's 6 hours of sleep. There's another hour and a half. That's 7 hours, before I get to 8 o'clock. Every 90 minutes, I'm thinking of a tiny little 2 minute CRP, micro CRP. That's just me pointing my brain in a different direction. Because as long as I'm focused on you guys, right, all I'm processing, your brain is just processing this information, right? And it creates the relevant emotion. If I just point it at the garden and the sky or wherever it might be, it just does the same thing. So my hydration bottle is only ever half full because it always reminds me to go and fill it halfway up again by the kitchen, by the window, just to get that little recovery rate, just to get that 4,000 hit of serotonin. You start to create how you move around buildings, how you move around your house, where you sit and where that is, in the gym and everything else. And you start to. So I've got, maybe 12 little tiny 2 minute CRPs in my first two phases of the day. I've got that first 90 minutes. I've got that little 30-minute cycle there that might only just, even if I can't get 30 minutes, I'll do 20 minutes or 15. Always do it because it helps the process. So when you actually look at it, I'm getting more recovery, way more recovery, but actually it seems like I'm doing less because I'm only sleeping for one block of 6 of 6 hours and 4 cycles. And so if something happens, like you guys ring me up, I'm planning to go to sleep at 11 o'clock and get my 5 cycles of 7.5. And I'm starting thinking about this pre-sleep routine that I've got to start doing about 9:30. And you guys ring up and say, Nick, it's the summer. We're going to bomb around with the mountain bikes, meet you at 7. I'm going to go out, do some trekking up the mountains. Then we'll have a bite to eat, bit of pizza, whatever it is. And I go, nah, that ain't going to happen. Because I've got to start thinking about pre-sleep around 9:30 and stuff like that to be asleep at 11. So I've already shifted it to 12:30 because most of the year that works for me. Spring, summer, winter, autumn, it sort of works for me. But even if, you're catching flights, something else crops up and you want to take advantage of it, or you need to take, then I might shift to 2 o'clock and just do 3 cycles. But I'm always keeping it relevant to the consistent start, use the other periods to balance it out. So I stopped, sometimes it's a big answer to your question, but I hope they're sort of getting it. It's one of these key factors is I stopped worrying about sleep a long time ago because it's big. Worrying about it is its biggest disruptor, right? Whatever level it is, I'm going to go to sleep tonight. Will I sleep all the way through? How am I going to feel in the morning? And I've got to get to sleep because it's important because these guys tell me it is, but I'm not in control of it. So once you stop worrying about it, I just go, look, I've got a 35 cycle, 24/7, 7 day a week routine. It's a technique that's there. I can adjust and adapt it and flow with it as it goes along. I've got some consistent points in there, which makes it all work. So as long as that's in place, I am not even interested in how I'm going to sleep tonight, or tomorrow night, or next week, or next Sunday. It's irrelevant because you've got this post cycle process going on that means you never have to worry about what's going on. You're always making really subconscious adaptations and you're getting more recovery than anybody who's just trying to get their 8 hours at night and failing. And so once you're there,
it is all about
why
rhythm,
should I worry about
really,
it?
so.
With just what you were saying there as well, Nick, especially from having read your book as well. I remember when you were talking about the effect of social media on sleep, that like other than the blue light, which you touched on already, like one of the biggest effects is just going to be like your mind being wired and just being stressed before going to bed, or even like with what you were saying there of having that ultra focused on getting that 8 hours sleep and having like say waking up at like 3 o'clock, checking your phone and seeing that, oh, I'm only going to get this amount of sleep now. Just would you feel that like stress would be one of the greatest factors that's going to deter you getting that good night's sleep?
Absolutely. And I think there's you know, you only have to look back maybe a short period of time with it. We had a lot of recovery breaks in our everyday approach. That's because they weren't planned for, but they were just there, right? So, I'm flying to Frankfurt from Manchester. I'm an international salesman, and I'm scribbling notes on my notepad, right, about strategy changes, about this, about that. But it ain't going anywhere. It's still in the pad, right? And when I get off the plane at the other end, I might go, on reflection, I'm not going to do any of that, right? But not now, because while I'm actually thinking it, it's going out into the world, right? It's that fast. So I think maybe not a great example, but it's the current example. I think, when somebody comes up with this fascinating thing called a European Super League, and what happens is the fans and most people just come out and go, no, that's crazy. Like, that is not sport. That is not what we're doing. So I think, this weekend, it's all about these things like sort of racism and this and everything else, but it's also about that we've exposed ourselves to a world where, anybody can just do what they like, which never used to be like that, and make comments anonymously. And it's not like, so I think eventually what happens is that collectively the fans come together and stop it. They don't not want football. They do not want social media. They do not want all of that wonderful stuff. But the people in charge have got to give us some way of managing it and controlling it better. That's all it is, isn't it? So I think all the sort of emphasis of like, tell all the younger generation to shut their tech down and stop gaming. I've got a grandson, right? He's 8 now, you know, addicted to Fortnite. You just can't drag him off it. It's whatever, it's like he just sits there. And it's like, it's so difficult to manage it, isn't it? Because he's got friends, he's communicating, he's been in lockdown. So why would you stop him talking to all his mates, having fun? That's like playing in the park. But it happens to be online, you know? So I think it's about us all collectively just asking for the rules and for the guidelines and for the things to be in place that allows us to love this stuff and whatever's coming in the future, but not be exposed to the excessive anxiety and stress that it can create. Right? And even at my age, I've actually been exposed. Not that I take too much interest in it, but people will just quite happily communicate online that I don't know anything about what I'm talking about. I've got no education, no academic. I shouldn't even be telling people what to do, and they can really attack you, right? And it, and even if you've been around like me for a long time, it's not nice. I mean, I don't care what you two guys talk about me in your own private space. You can say what you like, can't you?
Yeah,
But it's
definitely.
another matter if you start sending me letters, right? Of telling me what you think about me. And I think that it's not to be sort of dinosaurs in that area, but I think there's some really good examples that, with racism, with super leagues, with everything else. I think we're about getting to the point where we want to actually protect this wonderful thing that we've got because it's actually getting out of a bit of control. So you need to be able to have some sort of barriers to getting onto these platforms. However way they do it, you've got to be able to do it. You can't go into a pub if you're 16 and buy a drink. There's things that we have in place that you can't drive a car unless you're 17 and past the driving line. There's got to be some things that
Yeah,
protect
definitely.
this world that we absolutely love, don't we? It's just amazing how we can communicate and learn. It's
the
amazing, but
the anonymity
it's
of like
you've got
social
to
media,
stop the
like
other
you're
stuff.
saying there, though, it is definitely something that does need to be tackled. Like, it's so easy for people to just go under like an online alias and just get at people. But I suppose with anyone exposing themselves and putting their own thoughts out onto social media, which is great in terms of like the access to information that everyone has, but you are just open to being on that public domain, and just having people that are going to affect you and are going to affect your stress like that too. Which
Well, it's not to get into that too much, but you have noticed that with elite athletes when you mentioned stress and anxiety, mental health and well-being. It's sort of, we should really be the healthiest, fittest human population, knowledge population that have ever been on this planet. But we see a lot of growth in areas that in mental health and well-being. It's talked about a lot. So you kind of think, well, I was wandering around Manchester with David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Nicky Butt. People would come up and ask for an autograph, and they'd sign it. And that, maybe a shirt or a piece of paper or something, it would never go anywhere. It was just for them. They couldn't do anything with it. They just sign it, right? Then, if you just look at how that sort of shifted along, is that those players in today's world, they have homes that are completely security blocked out to protect themselves from anybody because they know, Google Maps, where does he live, right? There's no way of finding your own space. They travel around in cars with blacked out windows. They go from the house to the training ground, from the training ground to the house. They never go shopping. They never go this. They never do anything because even if they're sat in their garden, they feel exposed because something's watching them. Something's watching, and that can create, the following morning as a set of, yada yada yada. So it is sort of, I think all of us feel it anyway. I'm no superstar celebrity, but I feel it. Sort of conscious of somebody might be taking a picture of me, or maybe not, or I'm doing something wrong, or and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's just a little journey we need to go on. But it is a major thing in elite sports, and I think life a little bit. But most of the time I get involved going into clubs about performance because that's what it's about. But a lot of the times it's about trying to protect the individual from addictive behaviors, things that they start doing which become obsessive, which ultimately lead to burnout, dropout, or more fatal circumstances, right? And that's what every club and organization has to focus on as much as they do on the side of performance and nutrition, is also to be able to protect those individuals from becoming sort of too
Yeah, I think what you were
intimidated
saying
by the
there was
world
very
that they
powerful,
live in.
Nick. Definitely, like especially for any athletes out there, like your mind can be wired constantly, and like I can feel like your mind is so cluttered, and you are open to so much stress, especially if you are an elite athlete. But even I'd find, say, if I was after a race and I am even like lying down in bed, my mind would be just running for hours and hours on end. I'd find it really hard to get to sleep sometimes.
Yeah, I had to, it's sort of along the route you have conversations with all sorts of levels of athletes, but it's sort of like, sort of in the scheme of football, you know, not that long ago, if you're playing on the football field, the only people who's recording it is probably some TV cameras or the professional photographers, you know. And then some of you exaggerate that by 75,000 people who've got a camera linked to Wi-Fi and Twitter feeds and Instagram feeds while they're sat there. Is it's almost that natural ability to explore your sport, your talent, to do things, knowing that by the time you've just tried to do something or made a mistake, that is actually going live while you're still pulling your socks up. So it's kind of it's a bit of an exaggerated point, but you have to say there's a lot of, you do need a lot of guidance to be able to cope with this stuff because it's really really intimidating knowing that all the data that's being collected, everything else about everything, it kind of makes it really difficult
Yeah,
to go out
exactly.
onto the
Like when
park
you're
and kick
talking
a
about the
football around
guidance
and
and stuff
express
there,
yourself.
like
You
if
know
you
what
look
I
at
mean?
like even say techniques for your mental health, would the likes of say mindfulness or meditation, would you ever find that that would have a significant impact on the athletes you've worked with in their routine, even in terms of sleep?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because it's about that sort of process, like I was saying before. It's consistent start to the day, minus 6:30, first 90 minutes, little breaks throughout the day, the 30 minutes. So I would use mindfulness. It's a vacant mind space, meditation, just looking at the trees, sitting outside on a bench, whatever you can do. It's just those wonderful little things. They all gather up. And it's a bit like sort of giving your brain a chance, right? So I give it a nice, consistent start to the day. I get it fueled up and hydrated, mental challenges, get outside, loads of light, start the day. Lots of little tiny recovery breaks. So it's not always focused on just one thing all the time. And that's just looking away. The little 30-minute cycle, sometimes it'll give me a nudge and go, we're going to micro sleep you. And I go, okay, I'll sit on the couch. And I'm going to go into a little micro sleep. People fall asleep behind the wheel of a car, guy, on a motorway at 70 miles an hour. What? Now that is not a great human choice, is it? What it reminds you is, if you create the right moments in your 24 hours, the brain will just go, "Thank you, microsleep," or not. And so, whether it's meditation, mindfulness, listening to whales, binaural beats, using blue blockers, using a little lamp, whatever it might be, it's just yours. Now, I changed a Premiership footballer's life around when he was really struggling, and we started to think about what he could do. So in that little 30-minute slot that he would slide in, he'd actually started playing the guitar, right? And what he did is he took that sort of 20 minutes out to learn another chord and like that. And when he got home from games, completely wired, and was struggling to get to sleep, I would say, well, don't try and go to sleep when you get back at 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, because you're completely wired. Let's, in that example of 12:30 was asleep, let's go for 2 o'clock in the morning. So you get back around 12, take the pressure off, chill down, learn a few more chords on there, target 2 o'clock, then you got a better chance of going to sleep, get better quality, start your day off again. And it's certainly the sort of perspective was he actually enjoyed looking forward to going home late at night after a game. Because when he got home, he wasn't rushing around trying to get to sleep. He could actually chill out, put the headphones on, and just learn some new chords of his favourite tune he wants to play. By the end of the month, he could play that on his guitar without thinking about it. And that was a really great sort of mindfulness mindset of taking advantage. So was he actually asleep? Was he actually in recovery? But suddenly he was going like, I'm getting 4 cycles every night, Nick. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And when I don't do that, I do this. Oh, you stop worrying about it. Yeah. And by the way, I've got another song I can play on the guitar. Another one. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think it's not easy to explain, right? In that sort of sense. But you're always trying to get a profile of an individual and find their little ways and stop them thinking about, I'm not getting my 8 hours and I should sleep more and sleep in later and go to bed earlier. And what happens if I don't get back until 3 o'clock in the morning? And even some crazy things, but it is true that, I asked a bunch of guys at a workshop not that long ago, and does anybody sleep, well, or don't have any problems with sleeping well? And one person was confident enough to put their hand up and say, well, I don't seem to have any problems because I take 2 of these sleeping tablets every night. And it was sort of like, well, they're called sleeping tablets, Nick. So I take them to go to sleep, don't I? No knowledge of what those tablets are, what they do. It's just like, I've got a headache. Take some headache tablets. Take a paracetamol. It's sort of like, it's almost like, well, where did you get hold of them? He said, well, I just tapped in sleeping tablets in the browser. when suddenly the algorithms were chucking sleeping tablets in left, right, and centre, and he could buy them without prescription. So he started off taking one at 10 milligrams, and then he tried another one, 30 milligrams, and nobody knew he was doing it. You know what I mean? And it's sort of like, that's, I think, the whole business of what we're trying to deal with. Is suddenly something comes out and it says, it does this and it does that. But you've really got to be careful what's under your fingertips. If I tap, I need a new mattress in my browser right now, by tomorrow morning there'll be no adverts other than mattresses for sale, and telling me all sorts of wonderful things, isn't it? And I think that's it. It just gets a bit crazy. So that's what it is. It's yes, it's sleep. We're talking about sleep, and it's a big chunk of the day. But actually, I'd just like everybody to walk away from this and think, well, actually, whatever age you are, whether in your 8, 9, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, into your adolescence, formative growth years, into early adult, into your 20s, into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, wherever you are on that spectrum, really find your approach right now is your key to success in whatever you're trying to achieve.
Thanks very much again for coming on. Your first guest, and hopefully we can get a few more on. And thanks a million for letting us pick your brain a bit and learn a bit more about sleep.
I feel like I'm after learning so much from that episode and just listening to Nick there as well. And I hope you can all take a lot from that too, especially with not obsessing over the 8 hours and just making sure that you take an everyday approach to sleep and just make sure that take the whole day into account when you're looking at your sleep, rather than just focusing on the specific 5, 6, 7, 8 hours you get when you do go to sleep. But Nick, do you have any last words you want to give to the viewers before you go?
Ollie, as you've mentioned it, reading that's a good place to start. It's only a little look, not going to take long. You can listen to it if you want to. It is in 15 languages, so it's always nice to see it in Japanese, Chinese, Portuguese, German. But sportsleepcoach.com, if you go to our website, we've got loads of free content, lots of things where you can make an easy sort of self-coaching, easy step start, and you don't have to start going investing in one-to-one consultations with me or all that sort of stuff. You can actually really start your own little journey in little small steps, doing little things, reading about things, making little practical adjustments, and can't say any more than start your little journey as soon as you can, because it makes one hell of a game-changing difference.
Just lastly, for the title of that book, if anyone's looking for it, look for Sleep by Nick Littlehales, or Sleep, The Myth of 8 Hours, The Power of Naps, and the New Plan to Recharge Your Body and Mind. Thanks for listening, and I hope you all have a great week.